Walking up the stairs, I was one of the fortunate ones that didn't have to wait too long in the green room. And then it just this really surreal moment of the 5 dragons laid out there and you're in front of them and all these cameras around.
Him ripping those straps off your Trunki was one of the most stupid moments of TV history. If someone had offered you £1 million for the business, would you have taken it? This week, I'm delighted to be joined by the British entrepreneur, Rob Law. Rob is the entrepreneur behind Trunki, the iconic ride-on suitcase now seen in airports worldwide. After being turned down on Dragon's Den in 2006 after refusing an offer made by me, Rob built up Trunki into one of the UK's most recognisable children's brands before being sold in 2023. For his next move, Rob co-founded Zeepy, a content and device ecosystem that combines science, design, storytelling and technology to help families develop calm bedtime routines. Welcome to the Boardroom, Rob. I'm just trying to think when we last saw each other was on the set of Dragon's Den, which was a pretty stressful moment for you maybe.
Yeah.
But when was that?
It was back in May 2006.
So we're getting up to our 20th anniversary. You haven't changed. You're still looking very well. Do you play chess,
been a
by
few
the way?
scars. I play a little, but I'm no champion.
Well, we can just throw out some moves and have a laugh, you know.
Okay.
So what's your memories now of that day? Obviously, Trunki is known almost all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, go back to Australia, I see it there, known all over the world. What's your recollections of that day on Dragon's Den?
Yeah, well, I guess just before I went on the show, I'd literally received my first container of stock 2 weeks prior. None of the high street retailers would take my call. They said, go and talk to the toy buyer, the luggage buyer. So I hadn't got any real retail confirmed orders to take on the den. But I definitely needed mentoring, having never studied business, needed some cash, having not spent all my money on that first batch of stock. And I needed some marketing, and I got one of those. So yeah, walking up the stairs, I was one of the fortunate ones that didn't have to wait too long in the green room, because some people could be stuck there for days, literally. And then it just this really surreal moment of, as it looks on the telly, the 5 dragons laid out there and you're in front of them and all these cameras around. I was really nervous about remembering all my financials, because that was a big thing back then, wasn't it? Remembering your numbers. But once I got started, I seem to remember the pitch went pretty much perfectly. Got you to ride around the studio on the Trunki being towed along.
I think it was going quite well until Theo got hold of it.
Yeah.
Him ripping those straps off your Trunki was one of the most stupid moments of TV history. And I sat there in disbelief. His argument was moronic. You know, it is clearly a prototype, right? Clearly, you know, so prototypes are meant to demonstrate the idea, to ignite your imagination. What you did was all of those things. And I was sitting there in disbelief as he ripped off you know, it's a bit like, anyway, it was a stupid moment of TV. I really thought that was terrible what he did. Peter, equally moronic. Sorry, you know, same thing. I adore Peter. He's fantastic. He's got a lot of business skills. But all this stuff about I could make that in 3 weeks. Fine. It's your idea. It's your, you know, you had first mover advantage.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, there was a bit of back and forth, because he said, I can make this in whatever 3
But he
weeks.
said that, mind you, he said that to about half the contestants.
You don't have any value. And I was like, I have a trademark. I've got the brand Trunki, which to me was the most important part. Fast forward pretty much 20 years, we had 65 copies and counterfeits out in the market over the years.
Right.
But no one copied the brand. It was all just a ride-on suitcase. So when it came to selling the business, it was all about the brand value that the acquirers were interested in, not how many other ride-on suitcases there were on the market.
So Peter was out, and then I think Deborah went out. You and I got to haggling a little bit. What was your pre-money valuation of the business?
£1 million. I was after £100,000 for 10% of the business.
I liked it. I wanted to invest, but £1 million, you know, would you, if someone had offered you £1 million for the business, would you have taken it?
Back then? I mean, I was quite naive, so all I really my main goal back then was just to get Trunki on shop shelves, because that was what I wanted. I wanted to see it in shops. And then once that happened, then the goalpost moved, and I wanted to get it into different countries, and then the goalpost moved, and then wanted to build the global brand. So I never set out initially wanting to build a global brand. That just kind of came as you reach these goalposts and then kind of look further into the horizon.
You'd be in trouble in Dragon's Den because you didn't answer my question.
But would I have?
Would you have sold it for £1 million?
Would I have sold it for £1 million? I probably would have. When I quit my job as a design consultant, I was still reasonably young, late 20s, and I could take that risk. And I thought, well, if it all goes a bit tits up, at least I'll have kind of learned a lot about business, and it'll be like the best MBA ever. So that was kind of my mindset.
And then since then, I think you had an ad in the cabs. 4 out of the 5 dragons didn't get it. I'm always like, I'm the one who got it.
Yeah.
But every time I went to an airport, I saw Trunki, and I was like mixed emotions. I felt like really annoyed, like I didn't want you to succeed. Part of me didn't want you, but the other half really wanted you to succeed because I thought it was fantastic, and you're a good guy and a fantastic product. But then I just watched it explode.
Yeah, I mean they were amazing adverts themselves. When you saw them in the airport, you couldn't ask for a better advert.
Well, the colours are bright, and you see kids enjoying themselves, and then other children saying, "I want one of those."
The real challenge was kind of because it was a completely new kind of product category. No one would take the risk with it. I really struggled with investors, really struggled with retailers, manufacturers. So initially, I tried to license the design to a luggage company, and the luggage company said, "Oh, no, we're in the business of making luggage. You've made a toy." So I went and approached toy companies. They told me I'd invented a piece of luggage. In the end, it was a nursery product. It sat in the baby product market, and it never really sold in luggage or really in toy. And I was always pitching it as a lifestyle brand for parents, and I was agnostic over which category it would sit in. And around that time, Amazon started taking off, and we just did phenomenal business with them in the early days, and always have done. I mean, timing's everything, isn't it? And Trunki really took off partly on the back of the low-cost airlines really taking off, so it was a lot more affordable to go to Spain. And also, Dragon's Den was a really popular TV show that was kind of making business look a bit cooler, less suits and jackets.
Thank you.
And then you had the likes of Innocence and the guys behind that brand really kind of doing things differently in the world of business. And it was just a really exciting time to be in a startup where you could do things differently. You didn't have to wear a suit to every meeting. You could have AstroTurf as your carpet in the office and make work fun.
Is there any principles that you could pass on to someone trying to launch a retail product?
The market's changed an awful lot now, so it's a lot more kind of online e-commerce driven. But I think several kind of tips would be there's a traditional kind of value chain for selling a product, and this is what a lot of people are surprised by. So you're looking at kind of the manufacturing cost times 5 is roughly the retail price. Okay. So people think, if I can make it, if it sells at £20 and I can make it for 10, then I can make some money. No one's going to make any money. You need to make it at £5 or less, probably £4.
5 times is a golden number. Okay.
5's the golden number normally. And then you kind of have these D2C brands that have been coming out in the more recent sort of decade or so, which kind of have slightly slimmer margins, but then they can never get into retail because there's not the margin there.
You really got to get your production costs down. What about production? Any hints on production? Does it have to be made in China? Or
got a really interesting journey on that one.
Can you make anything in the UK?
We were making in China initially because that was the easiest way to get going. But then there were quite a few massive changes with the US dollar to sterling massively depreciated, which meant it was a lot more expensive shipping from China, buying product from China because it was all in US dollars. The shipping costs were going crazy. And I just got to a point where after a couple of years, I just couldn't understand exactly what my margin was because there were too many things changing within that supply chain, from fuel surcharges, ocean freight, US dollar, renminbi. So I kind of started thinking, well, maybe we could make it in the West. So I started putting a tender out to a couple of factories in Western Europe, and one in the UK quoted me the same price as a landed cost from China. So it was made in China, you pay the shipping, freight and insurance to land it at your doorstep, and they quoted the same. I was like, wow, that's amazing. We re-engineered the product to take out all the metal parts. So the Chinese made one had 25 metal parts in it, screws, pins that held it together. So being a product designer and wanting to create the best product, I set my design team the brief to take out all metal. So it was 100% plastic. The parts all just clipped together, which made it much more cost effective for a Western assembly line because it was just click, click, click.
See, I always think there's a benefit of trying to get something made in the UK in the sense, obviously it's the same time zone.
Yeah.
But also if you are developing a product, you can talk face to face, you can whip and jump in the car, go and visit the factory, you can have a look at the process, so obviously there's cost advantages being on the other side of the world. But in the UK, you can, particularly if you're developing a product, you can get more involved with a local manufacturer.
Well, we were probably 7 years in. I remember going to our warehouse that was down in Avonmouth, and there were just racks and racks of Trunkies. We had to buy so much inventory because after the success of Dragon's Den, we couldn't keep up with demand for literally 3 years. We were always out of stock of various models because the market was just completely taken off. None of the retailers could accurately forecast that level of demand. So we were buying a bit ahead of their forecast, but it would just sell out. So we were constantly trying to get, and you're on 120-day lead times from placing your order with the factory to it arriving. So that's a long period. Plus
Ordering
you've got to finance
from
that
China.
as well.
Ordering from China had the long lag.
Yeah. So I was thinking, well, we can all that cash, like we're doing what, £5 million at the time turnover, and there's nothing in the bank, and I'm struggling to make the payroll because it's all just sitting in stock. So I was thinking, well, there's all that cash just sat there. If we manufactured in the UK, we can release a lot of that working capital. If we make in the UK, we've got the opportunity to re-engineer the product, make it the best ever, and take out all the metal, which is great from a child safety point of view, great from a recycling point of view, and great from a being able to make it and staying ahead of anyone who's trying to copy us. And the London 2012 Olympics were coming up, and I was like, wouldn't it be great if we got the TV cameras down in this factory with Trunkies rolling off the production line with Union Jacks on the side. And then thought, well, actually, let's talk to Lowcog, the Olympic guys, and see if we can get a license. And we did. And we had Channel 4 and BBC and ITV all filming that first production run, rolling off down in Plymouth, the first Trunkies. And I thought, brilliant, done, sorted. Instead of buying myself an Aston Martin, I bought myself a very expensive set of UK tooling to be able to make Trunkies in the UK. Yeah, I achieved what I thought I wanted to. That's great. We've got a brilliant badge of honour now. More people are thinking about locally made stuff, and we were kind of right at the forefront of that kind of reshoring that was happening around the early 2010s.
You learn a hell of a lot along that journey about business, I guess.
Yeah. As a creative and a product designer, I love using my hands and I love colouring in as basically. But I was spending so much of my time in spreadsheets and forecasting and modelling stuff. And then COVID hit and there was the travel ban, and it was really, really tough. We just survived, but we couldn't get a business loan because of our balance sheet, because the private equity money was just sat there. So that was really frustrating. And after COVID kind of released, we had a great rapid acceleration out of that, but we still had this awful balance sheet that our private equity guys refused to negotiate. So it's like, there's no point in sticking around then. So me, my chairman and managing director all said, that's it, we're selling the business. We're not incentivized anymore to stay.
Yes. So
we put it up, and 3 years ago, pretty much this month, we sold.
Good sale, happy sale?
Happy sale, yep. I had an earn out, so I kind of lasted 14 months of a 2-year stretch there.
When you see a Trunki now, do you feel it's your legacy? Do you feel I shouldn't have sold? Like, I started a business called Home House, which is a private members club in London, it's gone very, very well. Mm-hmm. Fantastic place, restoration of a Georgian mansion. Everyone's been there, from Madonna to Brad Pitt. King Charles opened the place, and then we sold out. But I'm still very involved with it personally. Yeah. But you're always into, when the better it goes, you feel like, I shouldn't have sold that business. But on the other hand, it's your legacy.
I kind of had a 18-year run at it. Did everything I thought I could do. Amazing reshoring production. Really proud of the factory down there. Sold globally in over 100 countries, 5 million ride-on suitcases sold. So I kind of felt at peace with what I achieved.
You've got a new business now.
Yeah, really excited to be going again with another kids product business called Zeepy. Having taken a very short respite after selling Trunki and renovating a house, I then kind of got itchy feet again. And actually the three things that really frustrated me with Trunki first time round was being a solo founder, taking everything on my own shoulders, shipping a large bulky product all over the place, really hurt our margin from storage costs and freight costs. And we didn't have a recurring revenue model, so we didn't have anything to upsell really. In fact, we had the opposite, because Trunki was so well built, they were handed down and sold second-hand quite a lot.
And you went back to Theo's thing, but it fell apart.
Great from the environment,
Yes.
But yeah, it was always a bit of a struggle to maximise those sales. So this time round, having fixed family travel, we're now trying to solve family sleep. So I'm co-founder with my brother, and we're trying to enable kids to have better bedtimes and give parents their time back.
That sounds like a very worthwhile goal.
So
Is it achievable?
Initially, we started 2 years ago with a sleep training clock that tells children when to wake and sleep. It's a product category that already exists, but we're using science-backed colours. We're adding a wind-down phase, which to us is the most important phase, getting kids psychologically ready for sleep. And we have a calming bedtime podcast that kind of is built on child psychology and mindfulness to really get them rested and ready to fall asleep.
What ages are you targeting?
So our core target is 3, so 2 to 5 generally, and the podcast has really taken off in the US. We've sold 18,000 units of our clock.
Wow.
We've just done a fundraise, and we're building the future product, which combines our audio.
Can I have half for 100,000? What's in the box here?
So this is our sleep training clock here. This is our little Kip the Cat. So
This is what you've sold.
We have 2 characters: a sloth, Slumber the Sloth, Kip the Cat, and the podcast is around those 2 characters.
And how many of those have you sold already?
18,000 of these just on Amazon in the UK.
And when did you start the business?
We started trading February 2 years ago.
Wow, so you have got the touch.
Yeah, really excited to have now a digital product and a physical product, something that's much easier to ship around the world.
I'm guessing you probably don't, you've made a few quid out of Trunki, so now it's for the love of it. Do you feel it different the second time round?
It's just so much fun the second time round because you know what to do. You know how to create a barcode. You know how to do X, Y, and Z. I did all the packaging design myself rather than having a graphics team do it. It was just fun to create something with your own hands and get it back on that shop shelf. Yeah, just what a age to now be starting a business with AI and all the tools we can use. So AI helps sense check all our story creation. We use it constantly in our business to do various things, and it's basically just been me and my brother working 1 day a week, and we sold 18,000 products.
How important do you think a business plan is for something like that?
Well, yeah, that's a good point, because with Dragon's Den and back then 20 years ago, there was a fully written out business plan. This time round, it's a pitch deck with financial models, but there's no kind of, this is the marketing section and this is what we're going to do. It's just very visual. And also, I think you've just got to be really agile and nimble and just react to different situations and opportunities. So we created this deck saying, oh, we were going to have an app. And then halfway through pitching and doing some research, we realised we don't need an app to start with. We can use an online platform to host some of our content. So it's just being really nimble.
Keeping the costs down.
And the other thing, as you no doubt already know, is forecasts are going to be 100% incorrect.
Well,
it's a good direction,
yeah.
but you shouldn't sweat too much over it. Since having a bit more time, I've kind of got a bit into education, worked on the board at a university, and a lot of entrepreneurial clubs are starting up. And this whole kind of push towards trying to get kids to think about being an entrepreneur. I think a lot of it's around resilience and having that tenacity to keep going that is very innate in a lot of entrepreneurs. I know you had a tough childhood. I had my own personal struggles that built some really good lessons on kind of driving through brick walls. How do you feel about kind of this term entrepreneurs and is resilience really part of that?
It's an interesting question because when I'm meeting people who are starting businesses, it's always a balance between optimism and lack of realism. You don't want to. It's a fine line between being optimistic and being too optimistic. Mm-hmm. To get out of bed at 4 o'clock in the morning and look at your designs, or take a call from China, or do whatever you need to do. You need to have that resilience checked all the time by a dose of reality. Every successful entrepreneur I've ever met, have one quality, which is they are not lazy. They are driven or resilient, mm-hmm. How we ever want to describe it. That's that one feature. They can be young, old, they can be any race, they can be either gender, they can be educated, not educated, they can have family contacts, they can be shy, they can be charismatic. But the one thing that you don't meet any lazy, successful entrepreneurs. And I think whatever gives you that lack of laziness, call it resilience or energy, whether it's a deprived childhood or going through struggles, whatever gives you that motivation is a handy thing. I think motivation is huge.
Quite often I get asked, are there any things that you think you did wrong? Like, what's your biggest regret? Personally, I always think you learn from all the mistakes you make. So if you don't make them, you'll make bigger ones in the future. What's your kind of philosophy on that?
Yeah, I think you do learn. Like chess, funnily enough, when you're playing competitive chess, you learn much more from when you lose and when you win. Maybe the same in sport. You learn more when you lose and when you win. Mm-hmm. You've just got to make sure that, experience is costly. I prefer to learn from someone else's experience. If you watch things, and sometimes there's so much randomness in business, it can be hard to draw lessons from it. You can fail with a good business and succeed with a average business. So it's hard to get lessons from business. So experience, it's good and bad. But if I had a choice, I'd still rather that 100% of my businesses worked.
I had quite a few challenges. Everyone remembers Dragon's Den, but literally after we finished filming, there was a terrorist threat that was foiled in Glasgow Airport, and as a result, the government banned hand luggage. So you'll all remember that as the time when you had to put your liquids in a bag. That summer, my peak first summer sales season, the government had banned the very product I invented.
Yeah.
So I had to weather that storm.
You don't really learn from that. I mean, that's just unlucky, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just that kind of nimble thinking, pivoting, trying to find opportunities when you're facing a wall and just trying to think around problems all the time and kind of expecting when a problem hits you that you've got the ability to think around it and not just be paralysed and kind of struggle to overcome it.
You had a tough time, obviously with your health as well, and your sister, must have been easy.
Yeah, growing up, I kind of I have cystic fibrosis, and back in the late 70s, the life expectancy was pretty dim. So my parents were told I'd be lucky to make it into double digits. There was no pressure to do well academically. They just wanted to see me happy, and they were very supportive of me exploring different things and found my core passion in kind of design and creativity. But then studying A-levels, I lost my twin sister to the disease after a heart and lung transplant, which gave her an amazing extra year of life, but then the organs got rejected and she sadly passed. I was faced with this kind of reality of, am I going to go that way? How long have I got? And although it was deeply tragic and very traumatic, it was an incredible life lesson because it just really clearly pointed to me. I had two options: one, to choose life and to make the most of my time, or to just wallow in self-pity and succumb to my disease. So I clearly chose the first option, and that has always been at the back of my mind whenever I faced any challenge or obstacle. It kind of it pales in comparison to losing my twin. So everything's put in perspective. And I don't wallow about it too long, and I just crack on. Do
you ever feel like the life you're living is a bonus? If you're, lucky to make it to 11 years old, does it feel like, well, this is a bonus? I'm just going to work hard and enjoy life.
I mean, I'm slowing down a bit in my older age, but like a university, I would party hard, work hard, do everything I possibly could, and not sleep. Just experience as much of life as possible. I'm teaching myself a lot more gratitude, although I didn't quite realise what it was back in my earlier days. But being grateful for what I had. And that was one of the core skills that got me through COVID when I was one of those people who had to stay at home and couldn't go out. I literally didn't know when I was going to be able to go to a shop again. But we had a garden, had a good coffee machine, and I had 3 beautiful kids. So I just focused on the things that I really appreciated and played in the space that I could control and didn't worry too much about things out of my control.
Well, you're a special person, which is glad to see it's been recognised after that low moment of Theo pulling the strap off your Trunki.
Setbacks are superpowers. They're really opportunities to really grow, and they're not things that should knock you flat. They're things that you can grow from, character build, and learn a lot from.
Well, that was fantastic. I really have been wondering all these years how he managed to bounce back from almost being humiliated on Dragon's Den. His Trunkis are everywhere. And his story has everything in it, from design, manufacturing, marketing, cash flow. It's all in there. He knows so much, and I learnt from talking to him. And from a personal point of view, it was just nice to sit down with him, and I'm so glad that he's done so well. That's it for this week's episode of The Boardroom. I hope you found it as enjoyable and insightful as I did. We'll be back next week with another fascinating guest, but in the meantime, if you like what you've seen, don't forget to hit subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. Equally, if you know someone who's interested in starting or scaling a business and would benefit from hearing from the likes of Rob or myself, please share the episode. And I'd like to know what you thought of it, so please leave a comment in the box below. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next week in The Boardroom.